Why wouldn't you share it with us so we can share it with everybody else?
Yeah.
And our word for today on this Thursday, the first week of Advent, this Thursday, December the 5th, our word for today is does. Does is our word for today, and here to talk about it, Andrew Reinhart. Good morning, Andrew.
Andrew.
Good morning, Dave and Ron. How are you?
Great.
We're doing great. Now, Andrew, I have to say, when I select word of the day for Thursdays, I often look for a word that I know can take us on a deep theological dive. And this one was so obvious, I had to go with it. But I can't wait to hear how you put this one in context.
Yeah, well, I think I have some ideas. Our word for the day is does. I liked how simple it was. I have to admit, I had to double take at it. I thought, this is pretty open-ended here.
Yeah.
But I appreciated it because our gospel and our first reading are all about basically your actions, right? In the Old Testament, the prophet Isaiah is talking about, these people who've been unfaithful being brought low, by, we know historically by the hands of neighboring kingdoms of their enemies, but also it says trampled under the feet of the poor and the lowly. So there's this dynamic of sort of the just deserts. But then in our gospel, we have, once again, our Lord talking about doing the will of his Father. And the one who does the will of the Father is like building the house on rock. The one who does not is like building his house on sand. Mm. What's interesting, when we talk about doing, right, we're talking about the will, what we choose. And I think oftentimes people in our culture mix up doing, wanting, and wishing. Doing, wanting, and wishing. Right? We have this idea of the human person that I'm like my mind, I'm my soul, and not my body. Right? So oftentimes people identify themselves more with their thoughts than they do their actions. But we as Catholics, we believe that we are mind-body composite. We're spiritual and physical. So everything I do. And the reality is oftentimes there might be this, separation of my members. St. Paul talks about not doing what he wants to do, right? So there's this sort of battle within ourselves often for what we choose. But the reality is what I'm actually doing, what my body's doing, what is physically happening in the world around me as a result of my choices, that is what I am doing. But this internal dialogue, this sort of wishing that goes on in my head, this hoping that goes on in my head, right? That's in my mind. And it's actually, this distinction between wanting and wishing, it's actually a different part of the brain involved in these two different activities. And this is really important because, we might read these readings today and think of the ways that we struggle, the way that we continue to sin, the way that we continue to fall. And we need to recognize maybe we don't actually want to stop sinning. Maybe we're just wishing we would stop sinning. Right. But the reality is if we're doing it, it's probably because we want it. So our Lord's really challenging us today. And with this challenge, I think of, St. Augustine, who in his great story, he struggled with a long period of time of not being able to do the good that he wished he could do. And what he prayed for is he prayed that the Lord would help him want to overcome his sin, to actually overcome it. And so I think we need to pray for that too. So in order to do the good the Lord wants us to do, in order to build our house on stone and not on sand, we need to ask for the Lord to move our heart so that we can just not wish to be saints, but that we can actually want to be saints. And if we want to be saints, then we can actually do the good the Lord's calling us to do. So our word for the day is does.
Yeah, and again, the explanation is fabulous, and I love this idea that we have to go from wishing to actually doing, and then the Lord has to change our hearts. But that's big, Andrew. I mean, I know that we could say it, but to move from one point to the next, how in the world does one even begin that process?
I think calling out. You take the motions. Your heart follows your actions. So an example would be every time you fall into whatever you want to overcome, go to confession. Because part of confession is contrition, sorrow for your sin, and the firm resolve to not do it again. Right? So you're getting reps, you're getting practice in. It's like, how did Steph Curry get good at making 3-point shots?
Yeah.
He took a lot of 3-point shots.
Right.
Right? So if we want to practice wanting the good, right, we do that by practicing doing the good. So I'm not trying to be circular in my logic here, but our faith offers us all these opportunities to do the good by going to Mass, by going to confession, by praying, and by asking the Lord to transform us from the inside out as we're going about all these activities.
And what's the old saying? Practice makes permanent. You've got to be in the practice of doing it. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Great reflection.
Lord bless you.
Have a great week.
You too.